By mutual agreement, we're going to begin with a little bit of what I call the Department of Motor Vehicles introduction, in which I'm going to ask you a series of 10 brief questions, in which we're going to cover the entirety of your life. Question number one, Dennis. Where were you born?
I was born in Orange City, Iowa.
Father's profession?
Farmer.
Grandfather too?
Yes, my grandfather was as well. Multi-generation farm.
Mother's profession?
She was a housewife, also worked on the farm.
Who was your childhood hero?
I would say Neil Armstrong, first man to step foot on the moon.
College major?
Aerospace engineering at Iowa State University. A few cyclones.
Yeah. Graduate school?
I went to University of Washington, aerospace and aeronautics.
First job out of graduate school?
I was a summer intern at Boeing as an engineer, and then came back full-time as a aerospace engineer, wing designer.
So you went into Boeing straight out of graduate school?
Yeah, straight out of graduate school.
Job you hold now?
I'm chairman, president, and CEO of the Boeing Company, greatest aerospace company in the world.
So that definitely worked out for you.
Worked out okay.
Worked out.
Yeah.
Who is your adulthood hero?
That's a great question. Thinking back through it, I would say my dad.
Why?
My dad.
Why?
I just learned a lot from him, and he was never a big business executive, but at his core, he taught me about integrity, the value of hard work, the fundamentals, and even in big business, those work.
Is your dad still with us?
No, he passed away 2 years ago.
Well, I'm sorry for that, but did he know that you held him in that regard?
He did. He did. We had a number of conversations, and he always gave me good advice. As most dads do, he was pretty serious about his advice, but the fundamentals, they always worked. And he said the value of your reputation, hard work, integrity, how you treat other people, how you respect your teammates, it matters.
Is that almost regardless of what the question was, you kept steering the conversation back to an almost moral framework. You kept saying business is about character. And you knew you were being videotaped, so you knew that was going to get out.
Yeah.
Why was that so important to your message that you kept coming back to it?
Well, I firmly believe that. And in the end, a big global company like Boeing, with the responsibilities that we carry and the fact that lives depend on what we do, demands a sense of excellence and integrity in how we do it. And what makes our business work in the end is leadership. It's people exhibiting leadership and character. And no matter where we work in the world, and no matter who we interface with and what customers we're serving, we always have to come back to that touchstone, that our leadership matters, that our values as a company matter, that we have a responsibility, given that lives depend on what we do, to give our ultimate integrity and excellence to how we do our work. And to me, that traces back to leadership. And when we talk about attracting talent, we want to attract great technical talent, but we also want to attract talent that has leadership and character. And it's a tough, challenging business. So we need people with that kind of endurance, persistence, and focused on doing things the right way.
Well, you talked about the wrong way. You said that it can be tempting in business when you're chasing the bottom line to cut corners. Yeah. And you made the obvious point that in making airplanes you can't cut corners, but it went beyond that.
Yeah, and it goes back to our responsibility again to exhibit the utmost integrity, because if we're willing to cut a corner in how we run our business, ultimately that affects the culture of the company. Ultimately that'll show up in the services and products we provide to our customers. And so you have to start with the fundamental that no matter what we do, we're going to have that baseline of integrity and excellence. And we have to demand that of ourselves. Some of that, frankly, goes back to what I learned from my dad. That was a fundamental he taught me. It resonates with me. I think it resonates with our Boeing team. And I think it's part of why we've been around for 100 years. That's part of why we'll be around for another 100 years. And we ended up in Washington, D.C. We moved into our new house on September 1, 2001. 10 days later, 9/11. And overnight, the environment went from not enough capacity in the skies to not enough security in the skies. Completely changed the business model. Frankly, unraveled what we were trying to do with air traffic management. And that was a very, very challenging time.
What did you learn?
I learned a lot about leadership, learned a lot about taking care of our people through difficult situations, helping to explain the why behind the business. And it also expanded my network incredibly. I got to understand how Washington, D.C. worked, working inside the Beltway, and
But at a very intense time.
very intense and very challenging time, but also a chance to connect across the Boeing enterprise, across our commercial, space, and defense sectors as we tried to manage our talent through that time. So it was an intense learning time, one of the most challenging parts of my career, but I still value those leadership lessons.
Okay.
I know that you're a very positive person. You're a half full rather than half empty individual. So in that context, can you kind of describe what difference it means to stay positive rather than look at the negative side?
Yeah. Well, I think as a leader in a challenging environment like the one we're in, or any environment that's challenging, if as a leader you have to be able to inspire others to achieve things that otherwise they may not think they could achieve, and it's got to be balanced. Being a glass half full without being realistic is not being a good leader either. It's not responsible. So I like to think about it as being realistically optimistic. But at the same time, you've got to be able to lean forward and maybe see around the next corner, encourage people to strive harder, do something that they didn't think was possible. And having that inspiration quotient, I think, is an important part of being a leader. And sometimes that's from behind, encouraging the team. Sometimes it's stepping out ahead. But it's always done with the idea that a team who's inspired to achieve more than individually they thought they could achieve. As a team, they can do tremendous things. To me, there's nothing more exciting than being a leader who can help create that kind of inspiration and then just watch a team accomplish things. And when they accomplish it, be able to say, wow, I didn't think we could do that.
How about just amplifying a little bit and describe your definition of what an inspiration quotient is? That's a neat concept.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the ability to inspire whether things are going your way or when the chips are down. I like to think about, as we evaluate leaders, I really like to test leaders on how they treat their people when things aren't going their way. It's pretty easy to lead when things are going well. But in our business, when things aren't going well, how do you treat your people? And can you be inspirational when things are just not going your way? And how do you treat people with the respect that they deserve? Do you maintain your character and integrity under pressure? I think that's part of having an inspiration quotient. And part of it is being willing to take a risk. I mentioned earlier tonight, right? It's not taking foolish risks, but it's taking risks and stretching and being willing to put it out there and know that you may not always succeed, but it's important that we stretch and that we create the opportunity for others to stretch. I think that's part of it.
To build Boeing's next 100 years, who do you need? Who do you need?
I think the most important investment we'll make for the next 100 years is in talent. And we need to stay on the leading edge of technology, that technology in our products, in our internal processes and manufacturing. But most importantly, we need the talent. It's multidiscipline talent. It's talent that knows how to operate globally, that has a technology savvy and a business savvy to it. And I would argue that the investment we make in talent is probably the most critical investment we make as a company.
You're in your 30th year at Boeing,
Yeah.
but we're now in a world where I think graduates are not expecting to have lifelong careers with a single company, that model might be changing. So how does that challenge Boeing? I mean, it doesn't sound like you want a rotating door. You want people in for the long haul.
Yeah, the key is, and it's different for different companies, the culture at Boeing is we have a lot of people that come to Boeing because they want to do big things, right? I went to Boeing because I wanted to work on things that changed the world. And Boeing is big enough that you can have incredible career variety and challenges and work anywhere around the globe, work across commercial space and defense domains, and have an incredible career, but inside a company that really changes the world. And that connection to the mission, the purpose, understanding that we do things that really matter, that lives depend on what we do, attracts a certain talent set that has a little longer term view on their career. Now, that's not the case for everybody, and we do have some people that rotate in and out of Boeing, and that adds value. But I think we'll always have a segment of our employees who want to be there for the longer term because of the amazing things we do and the long-term investments that we make.
Let's talk a bit about this position that Boeing is in as it's a technology company. It's always been a technology company. It's a 100-year-old technology company, and that's pretty uncommon. I did some digging on how many companies there are that existed 100 years ago. And you can find lists of this. And what I found is there's a hat company, and there's a ketchup company, and there's a company that makes towels, and a company that makes beer, and there are a lot of soap makers and candy makers. Not high tech. And among publicly traded companies that were here 100 years ago, there are actually several dozen, but almost all of them are banks. There are some food companies, but among the ones that we would think of as technology, there's only, I could find IBM, Ford, Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, General Electric, and Boeing.
Yep.
So what does it say that technology companies generally don't get to be 100 years old? What does that say about the future?
I think it's really important that high-tech companies like Boeing continue to stay on the innovation leading edge, that we have the ability to remake ourselves over and over and over. Those kind of companies are the ones that go from small innovative companies to big global companies like Boeing. But part of our DNA, part of our culture has been to always be on that leading edge of innovation. And you continue to see it today. We're bringing more innovation to the marketplace today than we ever have. The new 787, the next generation wide-body twin-engine airplane, the 777X, space launch system to Mars, new digital payloads on satellites. Our ability to continue to innovate products, but also innovate how we run our company. Productivity, innovation in how we manufacture, bringing robotics and automation and 3D printing into our manufacturing spaces. We have to be willing to continue to out-innovate, continue to change ourselves to feed the future.
Yeah, and not to go too far off track here, but it kind of ties back to this leadership theme. I have had the privilege in this job of hearing so many stories from soldiers who talk about they were in a firefight and they heard the sound of the Apache and they knew it was going to be okay. Or people that got evac'd in a Chinook and they're alive today because they got evac'd. And boy, I tell you what, when you hear that from men and women who serve our country and who are alive today because we had the privilege of building equipment for them, there's nothing more motivating than that. And that's what resonates with our team.
And that's why I led you into that discussion, because you've just heard what leadership is all about. It's caring for others, it's taking care of others, it's respect, and it's taking care of your customer. That's leadership. That's the Boeing leadership model, by the way. In business, when you think about the Oskin Institute, we talk about courage. And in business, generally, courage is moral courage rather than physical courage. Can you talk about some of those instances where you've had to, without going into too much detail, where you've had to display moral courage in making decisions?
Yeah, one of the things we talk a lot about in our business is the importance of having integrity and character in the decisions we make. And I tell you what, in the business world, there are plenty of opportunities for you to cut a corner, maybe do something to gain competitive advantage. And I tell you, the pressure in today's industry is just immense. The competitive nature of what we do is incredible. And so the opportunity and the pressure to gain advantage by maybe not quite doing things to standard, that pressure is always there. And we tell our people there is no room in what we do for compromising between performance and values. In fact, that's a false choice. If you're faced with something where somebody says, well, you can either do it the right way or you can do it to the way that's going to gain advantage, that is a false choice. We have to be a business that performs with values.